Well, Tuesday night was a night to celebrate for Democrats, but how indicative were the recall results on a national scale? Democrats have long had a stranglehold on California, but should they expect to sustain that momentum in key swing states with the midterms approaching? Joining me now is Lanhee Chen, a former two-time senior policy advisor to the National Republican Senatorial Committee and frequent political commentator. Lanhee, great to have you on. We had on one of the congressmen from California, and he was saying that he thinks that it's done. I mean, this recall, Brad Sherman thinks it's done, and that the rest of the country should pay heed to this. Do you think this is a bellwether for the country?
Yeah, I don't. I think that's a ridiculous notion. I mean, look, what happened in California is specific to this particular election at this particular time. When you have one side spending, 60, 70, 80 million dollars, and you have the other side spending maybe 10, the results, I think, are relatively predictable. So to somehow see this as indicative of what's going to happen during a time when we know that the president's party traditionally loses seats in that first midterm election, which is going to be Biden's midterm election next year. We know that there are a number of headwinds in a number of places, by the way, including California. The idea that one could take this outcome and nationalize it, to me, is a completely ignorant and, again, ridiculous notion.
What about the strategy, Lanhee? I mean, do you see more people, more candidates doing more of the Trump bashing, of painting Republicans as, they're clones of Donald Trump, as Joe Biden said about Larry Elder this week?
Yeah, I think at some point, Trace, it becomes a pretty tired argument. I think it's the same playbook they're going to go to over and over again. I'm sure they'll go to it here in California. They'll go to it in other parts of the country. But, what it really masks, what that strategy masks is you never heard anybody who supported Gavin Newsom talk about the reasons affirmatively why they were supporting him. It was always about, well, he's not Donald Trump. Well, he's not the candidate who looks like Donald Trump. And there was never an effort underway, I think, to defend his record on any number of different issues. And I think you're going to see that dynamic play out across the country. There's going to be an effort to try and make this 2022 election, at least amongst Democrats, about the past. And I think Republicans, it's incumbent upon Republicans to make this election coming up in 2022 about the future, about what's to come. I think if they can do that, they'll be successful.
What about the future of Gavin Newsom? I mean, he's going to run again. And is he emboldened by this? Because we have a Democratic consultant. She says the following here. The Republicans have gone after Newsom for the last year and a half, and they have failed. So what makes Republicans think they'll have a better chance in a general election when the governor's just convinced voters to let him stay? Does maybe the prospect of other Democrats challenging him seem more appetizing to them after this recall or not?
Yeah, I don't know if the challenge is going to come from Democrats. I do think it's the case that one should not misunderstand what happened tonight. Tonight was not some glowing endorsement of everything that's going on in California. And to the extent that there are candidates next year who are willing to carry forward a message that says, listen, there are some things we need to improve on in California. There are some things we need to get right, whether it's dealing with wildfires, dealing with homelessness. These kinds of messages will resonate. Remember, when Gavin Newsom, the only reason he's facing a recall election is because millions of Californians, Republicans, Democrats, and independents came together to ask for this recall election to happen. That similar dynamic is going to remain next year, and it's very important for Democrats not to overplay their hand there, although I think it's possible they will.
When you look at the numbers, I'm not sure you can see them, Lanhee, in the bottom right-hand side of the screen, and I can show them to you. It's, no on the recall, 65%, yes, 35%. What happened in just the past few weeks? Do you think Republicans at some point in time decided that maybe it just was no longer worth going to polls? This was a losing proposition in the past 5, 6 days, 10 days? What's your thought on what happened?
Yeah, and Trace, I think there's a couple of things. I do think, first of all, the enthusiasm that was there, let's say 3 or 4 weeks ago, for some reason did dissipate. I think some of that, frankly, some of the people who thought this was going to be closer probably wasn't closer because the margin was expanded by people who were, in fact, more enthusiastic to vote to keep Gavin Newsom in office. And a lot of the folks may have decided, yeah, it's not worth it. The other thing I would say, and this is a point I was making earlier, is when you have such a huge financial disparity between the two sides, I mean, let's not forget the anti-recall forces here literally had multiples of 6, 7, or 8 to 1 if we count all the different groups involved. And when you have in politics that big of a disparity in money, it's very difficult to win. That's just the reality. And so this election really was a peculiar election. I think it's very difficult to take this and nationalize it, as we discussed earlier, or take this and say this is going to look just like future elections in California. This was a very particular time and a very particular space. And again, I think the financial disadvantage that the pro-recall folks were at was just too significant.
Yeah, I've got to go here, but what about Larry Elder? Does he have a political future? Is he a political force in California now?
Look, I think his message, I think that the one of change certainly is one that resonated. I think, he's going to be able to do kind of what he wants to do. But I just say this, Trace, briefly. I think it's important for California Republicans to understand that they're not going to be competitive unless and until they're able to show an alternate vision that, frankly, is more attractive to more Californians. And I think that's got to be a big part of any Republican appeal going forward.
Yeah. Lanhee Chen, great insight. Thank you for staying up with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.